Okay, welcome everyone to today's meetup on our PM Book Club, and we are going to be discussing balanced leadership. We'll try to introduce the subject matter. We'll talk about different leadership styles. Then we'll have a discussion. We have some really senior academics here today with us, so we'll have a good discussion. But before we start, some ground rules. We are always respectful of each other's views. This session is being recorded, so if you wish to turn off your camera, you can. Please do use chat for ideas and questions. And we always encourage everyone to talk between meetings. You could start a discussion on the LinkedIn group or on the Meetup group. And as always, do send us feedback and suggestions. That helps us in not only picking up the next books, but also how we can make these book club meetings more interesting. Next meeting is only a week away, which is the meeting with the authors. We will touch on that as we go along. But with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Himanshu Jain. I am one of the co-conveners of the book club with Nick here. My background is in project and product management, and I am a trainer in professional skills like project management. So I am a project manager and a product manager. I like to think I'm a servant leader, but we'll see as the discussion goes on. Over to you, Nick.
You're too noisy to be a servant leader.
Am I?
No, I'm just joking. I'm Nicholas Lambert. I work at the University of Westminster. I'm a project management lecturer. I have managed projects, and now my passion is the responsible project management movement, where we hope to make a difference through projects, essentially. And we've got this book club to discuss ideas. We're always hoping that we will have a glass of wine with us, but we don't at the moment. And you asked there, Himanshu, have you read the book? Actually, I must confess, this is my first confession today, that I have not read the book because the book has not arrived. And to replace that, I have read many papers that the authors have written, because this is ongoing work from before 2014, as far as I can tell, which is culminated into this book. I refused to buy the Kindle because I really want the book in my hands. And so I hope we will present it properly and have a better understanding of balanced leadership. We've got in the room people who do understand and teach it. So we'll see where we go from that. And I am hoping I am democratic. I'm not sure about Hermann Hesse himself. So that is me. I took too long for that.
Anyone else like to introduce themselves?
Franco, and I am long-time navigator of the PMI, and I am interested to follow all the books that we find on the market and are reflecting the current status of the art.
Thank you, Franco.
Okay. A small interlude, Himanshu, to the previous slide that you had, where you introduced the one before that, is from Penny Pullen's book, and we're hoping to get Penny Pullen, who has written a new book since. about virtual leadership. So we may have a one-off with Penny to give us new insights, post-COVID insights.
Yep.
There we go. There are advertisements in today's.
Okay.
Shall I?
Yes.
This is a book written by three authors. Ralf Müller, I couldn't find the umlauts, who is an eminent professor with over 10,000 citations since 2017. And he has been co-writing this with Nathalie Drouin, who I think is in Canada, works in Canada, but maybe she now works in Europe, I'm not sure. And Shankar Sankaran, a third professor, who works in Sydney, the university in Sydney. And they have worked before together, and you do recognize the book, Organizational Project Management, which they co-edited. Those are the three editors of that book. And then subsequently, they went to write this book we're talking about, Balanced Leadership. And actually, in Organizational Project Management, the seedings of this book already exist, and chapter 13 itself is actually dedicated to balanced leadership. So the process, especially in Ralf Müller's mind, as far as I can tell, has been ongoing. This is a 10-year process where he's refining this idea about balanced leadership, while he writes other books about leadership, or if I may use one of his terms, more static as opposed to dynamic leadership. But they are respected in the academic community, and that is what I wanted to suggest with this slide, and the fact that there is another book preceding them, the Organizational Project Management book, and if you look around the master's courses in this country and other countries, you will find that as a title of the master's itself, Organizational Project Management. We are hoping to have the authors next week, but we are now slightly baffled because if one is in Canada and the other one is in Sydney, it will be very difficult to get all three of them in a good time. We know we would have agreed for 5:30, so I am hoping we will have all three. Because one of the questions I want to ask them is, since there are three of them, who was the vertical leader and who were the horizontal leaders, and how did balanced project management work for them? Did they actually, could they see their own models and their own theory and their own process in their own book? I'm getting fascinated with my own question, which I have not yet asked. Leadership itself, if we go to the next slide, well, this is just a standard thing about nice words, but leadership has been a subject of inquiry for decades, and different research streams have provided useful knowledge about project managers as vertical leaders. Yes, it takes a bit of time to understand what they mean by balance, what exactly is being balanced, and who is the vertical and who are the horizontal leaders. And sometimes we get plurality, that is, there's more than one vertical leader, which confused me. But for us to start with, the vertical leader is the project manager, and the horizontal leaders are members of the team who are part of this, who every now and then are given a chance or take over politely, that is, with the permission of the vertical leader, to actually run a section or a part of the project itself. And it is that dynamism, if I can read sort of the purpose of all this from a paper that they have written before the book. As the pace of change affecting organizations increases, the complexity of projects also rises and increases the need to adjust leadership styles. Adopting more flexible and adaptive leadership approaches is becoming more important for managers and project managers in these complex and changing environments. We will all agree that the environments that we're working with are getting more and more complex. They are continuously increasing in size, as Flyberg continuously reminds us, and the project manager can no longer be a specialist and the sole decision maker in all areas from technology to business and strategy. If it is actually our project can no longer be sort of led, if you wish, by just one person all the time because of the increased complexity. Yes, he or she must rely on team members and their specific expertise for appropriate and timely decisions in a competitive market. This is complemented by shortcomings in existing leadership theory, which takes a rather static perspective by either theorizing the leadership of a vertical leader or the leadership of the team. Yeah, so this is written in about 2017, and there is this observation that every leadership, all the leadership literature seems to be either this or that, either from the team's perspective or from the leaders' perspectives, yes, but not both in parallel. And this is the point of this book. It has taken some time to germinate, I think, in their minds. Because project reality shows that both types of leadership prevail in projects, but little academic work has been done. Therefore, there is a need to investigate the balance between vertical leadership of the senior or the project manager and horizontal leadership of the team member or team members, and the context in which the balanced leadership occurs to lead the process to process success. Yes, because since there is a change, if you wish, of leadership, then we have to study that interchange itself. And that is the basic premise of the book. We should be, or we are more and more familiar with leadership models that exist, and they are part of the introduction of the book. We sometimes split leadership models between transformational, which is inspirational people who inspire change and innovation, as opposed to transactional, which is to complete tasks for rewards. And we say that the transactional, the famous thing is that the transactionals do the right thing, but the transformation, no, I got that wrong. One does things right and the other one does the right thing. And I had a discussion yesterday where the transformational leader actually should be the one who does the right thing right. So there are two rights in there. The more managerial and the more leader sort of perspective. And a lot of the literature depends on that. This is now about 30 years old as an observation. Actually, it goes further back. Yes. And we have this new kid in the block, the servant leader, yes, who somehow is invisible, sacrifices the self to lift the others, which itself comes from literature. The inspiration is a book by Hermann Hesse, a very strange little book actually, but very nice to read, where the author has not realized that actually there is someone leading them to the journey to the east, which is the title of the book itself. So if you want to read something of the summer, this is a nice little book. Hermann Hesse is a very nice author, actually. Other leadership models that exist, if you remind me, Himanshu, are... I need a change of slide. Yes, autocratic, democratic, or laid back. Yes, this is the one that they specifically use in the book. Yes, where the autocratic is, well, what the words say actually, I will not elaborate on those. I am hoping they are clear. We do not want the laid back because the laid back actually does not exist. Does not exist is a leader that is not there, not a servant leader who appears not to be there, but actually a bad leader. Democratic really means how do we take the decisions? Yes, and do we democratically generate ideas, or do we democratically actually take the decisions? The word decision is important. Since we're going to change from one leader to the other, from the vertical to the one of the horizontals, yes, we need to study, and that is where the book becomes a bit critical, the decision-making process. What sort of decisions exist, and how do we actually delegate these further down, or horizontally actually, to the chain. Other leadership models and words that exist in the literature are, if you move me, yes, the bureaucratic as opposed to the charismatic, and these pace-setting ideas. They come from Goldman and Boyage's book on EQ, essentially. And the bureaucratic is more managerial, does everything by the book. Not to be sneezed at, actually, because you need some bureaucratic, some transactional leadership in project management. We are not here saying one is better than the other. We never actually say that. Yes, it is a balance between the two. That is either internal, and again the book does a lot about the internal processes, or external, how we actually move this decision making through trust from one person to another. But we could juxtapose bureaucratic and charismatic, and I think there is another grouping that becomes part of all the vocabulary of leadership, and that is less visible. But as soon as you talk about decisions and allowing others to take decisions, you are really talking about trust. And as soon as you're talking about trust, you're really talking about trusting in the morals and ethics of the other person. And therefore, we do have leadership models that use respect and justice as the guide. This is the ethical kind. Yes, or compassion, lead with compassion. I am always on an and or here, not on an or. And the more coaching, we do have coaches in the room today, but they're sort of developing other people to become leaders. And I think there is a lot of coaching. If you are horizontal, vertical, and you give horizontal leaders the authority to do something, you are actually in mentorship territory, or in developing others' territory, which is a great EQ. And so this is the leadership vocabulary that exists, Himanshu. I'm not sure if anyone wants to add or participate or give us any ideas about these.
I think that leadership is associated with the ethics of a group. We cannot separate the leadership from the environment. So it's not a matter of mixing various, in my opinion, various type of leadership in one environment, but it's to adjust to the environment. What I mean is that each culture, I say the environment, the project environment that may be in one region of the world rather than one other, has the motivation. What are the motivation of the people? And the motivation of the people are changing according to the global ethics of the society and the ethics of the company where they work. So in certain part of the world, for instance, it is the vertical leadership that is accepted rather than other type of leadership. If you think of Russia, or also in India, Himanshu, where there is this concept that is embedded in the culture of several levels of authority, and there is no doubt that the vertical leadership is more effective than one horizontal leadership that would be perceived as a weakness. Vice versa, in other circumstances due to the social environment and the company culture, you have to behave in a different manner. Because, in my opinion, leadership, it is understanding the motivation of the people and triggering that motivation. This is, well, for discussion, I mean, I'm putting...
Yes, these are very good points, but they do not take away the premise of Müller et al. In that one person can no longer do everything. Yes, as the technology is changing, there are certain people who know the technology which the project manager or the vertical leader does not know. Therefore, it becomes necessary to pass control in some form or another to someone who knows that particular area. And it is that necessity that makes this book more important at this time in 2022. Means that it is no longer possible, wherever you are in the world, to know everything. EQ is mentioned many times. Emotional intelligence is mentioned a lot of times in the literature that I have seen from Müller and the other two. Yes, but also the cultural effects. The word cultural actually does come in more and more, and indeed it is very critical. This is a very good point, Franco, but let us see how they deal with that, because this is the thing. They've got the theory, and then they've got the process, and they've got what they call events. And in there, you will see the possibility or the probability of it succeeding or not. But there is a process through which, essentially, this is the book. The book is really the process to actually pick someone. And before you pick someone, if you are the vertical leader, that someone himself or herself has to start working to become pickable, if you wish. Yes. So from the team, someone will try and come up. Yes, the coach would understand that much more, that someone is trying to take a position of responsibility, yes, and then the vertical leader is in the process of needing someone, and therefore how do you choose someone there, and whether it is a cultural thing, and there are cultural problems and difficulties in even raising your head above the parapet or not, those things are taken into account, I think, through the process. But it needs to be studied, I believe. I don't know if anyone has more ideas on.
Shirley wants to come in.
I'm not sure I want to come in at this point. I was trying to work out what the theory was. I presume the theory is to give you a process to balance, but now you've just explained that it's the process of picking a person. And we've always had processes for picking people. And it all depends on philosophy. So for me, I always struggle with the idea of leadership because it depends so much on philosophy, and you know what your group of your community will tolerate, and the leaders who are accountable. I'm not sure our politicians from the country are very, very emotionally intelligent always. They certainly are pickable. You know, they make themselves pickable. So the culture, I think, has enormous impact on leadership. Almost leadership is being belittled in lots of ways, I think. So I find the whole movement of leadership development quite interesting, because it's not clear to me that we can actually think about leadership without thinking about philosophy and teaching people philosophy.
I am hoping one day we will be teaching people philosophy and ethics, for that matter. And you're absolutely right, Cecilia. And really, the leadership thing is quite complicated, because as soon as you start reading a bit more about it, it says that you yourself, in one project, and depending on the group of people you have, will actually change leadership styles.
Yeah.
Yes, so it is not something that fits everything. The example I give to my students about the football manager, who has very, very strong players that he well, usually he is managing, and some of them, maybe to coerce them, you have to shout and say, you have to do this, what's wrong with you, and all that. Yes, and the next guy who is in the same team, maybe a more polite way will achieve the same results. So it does depend on many things, and also the expectation of the team. Yes, this cultural thing. Do you expect me to appear to be strong? Yes, and therefore I have to indicate to you that I know everything? Or do you accept that nobody knows everything? Yes, more Scandinavian view of the world. But let us go on. In fact, with Himanshu, we are doing this the other way around. If we are going to reach the contents of the book at the very last slide instead of the very first slide, because the terms are not. I think the terms are difficult to understand, and our attempt this time is for us to get the terminology so that we can ask more intelligent questions from the authors next week. We are learning fast here.
Nick, there is another question from Augustine. Will project manager act as a manager or a leader in a project? The classic debate. Will balance weigh much on manager side or leadership side?
Augustine, thank you. Why don't we ask the authors next week? Everything, my understanding of everything we're doing in project management is additional to what we were doing before. We are not throwing away something that we were doing before to replace it with something else. Yes, and it would be a very, very big error to think that we should be leaders or we should be managers. Yes, we should actually be both. And I think the Balanced Leadership book itself is trying to get to that point. Yes, but there is a paper that nobody seems to quote by Perry in 2004. Who actually proved that if you are very strong in management but not in leadership, you will have success, but you will not have great success. If you are a leader but you have no managerial skills, you may have flashy successes at the very beginning. You will appear to be doing things, but it will not be sustainable. So that paper actually, Agustin, gives you the answer that you really need both. But now that we really need both, how do we balance that? How do we pass on? How do we take decisions? Is it a weakness if I do a workshop to decide the plan? Or is it a strength? Depending on the culture, this answer may be yes or no, depending on where we are coming from, which was Franco's point. Let us go on. Let us try and get to that process. Beautiful. Now, the vertical leader, let's just try and get the terms because it is, you see the term balance is from the Müller work 2018. So vertical is the person who is appointed or former leader. Again, I have a question there because there are a few people appointed. There's a program manager appointed. There is a sponsor maybe who appoints. Then the program manager appoints project managers. So are we talking about, which one are we talking about? The project manager or the program manager? Who is the leader? Yes, and you see that there is always some delegation and some balance already inbuilt in the standard traditional way of doing projects. But somewhere, the vertical is the appointed person. Yes, and then we can have shared or distributed leadership where the leadership itself is distributed and stems from team members. I am guessing that this is how they wrote the book. If I get 3 academics in a room, it's difficult otherwise. While balance is this dynamic, temporary. They work with the word temporary very much. Yes, that this is the balance leadership is a temporary within the project. It's not an ongoing thing. So it's a dynamic, temporary, and alternating transition between vertical and horizontal leadership for the accomplishment of desired states in, for example, a task or an outcome or the entire project. Yes, this is typically executed by a team member upon nomination by the project manager. Yes, the word pickability is not in the book. That was my word. It's an awful word, but there we go. Okay, and therefore the horizontal leader is the person who is nominated, yes, but governed by the vertical leader for the time of the nomination. Yes, so the leadership, the control, the responsibility and accountability, this is another key issue here. Accountability and responsibility for the actions does not go away from the vertical leader. Yes, even when you appoint the horizontal leader to deal with the task. And that is, I think, another key point. Yes.
Nick, what you are saying is evoking in my mind the classic example of the orchestra, where there is the conductor and there are 100 members that are playing certain instruments. So, and the distribution and the lead of the motive is sometimes shifting from one instrument to the other instrument. But eventually, it is the capability of the conductor to allow this delegation, but is overarching and coordinating the entirety. So also when you see, and we go to the language of the authors of horizontal leadership, is not just a delegation of authority, but it is the project manager that, of course, by nature, he cannot play all the instruments. It's not for that. The knowledge is not with him, but it is his ability to delegate, to use those elements at the appropriate time.
Indeed, but I think that goes even beyond the example of the orchestra, because it is not just the technology, which in this case is the music, that is important. Yes, for the orchestra to play, they have to sell tickets. It is part of a business environment. Yes, so there is marketing and there is business strategy. Yes, to which the orchestra that we are creating now is part of. Yes, and while the maestro probably is totally leading the orchestra, and yes, of course, she cannot play the flute as well as the first flute and all that. Yes, it is the other bits, the business bit and the marketing bit, where they have to relinquish some of the process, or someone else has to relinquish some of the process. And this is the catch. It is the complexity of our projects, which have different components, which work together. In an orchestra that happens, but then there is the world outside the orchestra, in which the orchestra itself operates. Yes, and so the orchestra becomes a smaller example, I think. Because the orchestra is a very beautiful example, but when you see the maestros, some of them are their own brands, if you want. They are their own marketing. Yes, and some are not. Some are introvert, actually. They disappear. And that, I think that is there. Like an author today of a book. Yes, you also have to be a PR person. You have to go and do podcasts and all these things, while the natural world of the author is usually in my own room where nobody can see me, and I can only see trees or something when I'm writing. Is that complexity? If things were not complex, balance would not even be here as a book, I think. let us move on. Thank you very much. This is a very good point, Franco, first of all. Let me, because I'm struggling here. We just found this cartoon and we thought it was nice, so we just put it there. Leadership itself is not static. Authority in project shifts dynamically. I am now reading the slide. Between project managers, individual team members, and sub-teams, depending on the situation. Leadership may be exercises through a vertical, horizontal, shared, or distributed leadership approach. However, balanced leadership ensures the best suitable approach is used in any given situation. Yes, they are very keen to promote the process that they have tested, they have theoretically stated, and then empirically tested with case studies. That is their methodology. They are quite academic, actually, in their approach on this one. But again, it is the words. I want the words to become part of our understanding of the vertical and horizontal. And I'm saying this because I myself took some time to understand what they really meant. And therefore, what is it we are balancing? So if we can go on, Himanshu, for a moment, if nobody again, Müller, like when he was working with Turner, they're taking general leadership theory and they're making it project specific, yes, and they're creating a theory of balanced leadership and the situation in which different strategies are required, almost trying to answer Franco's first point. Yes, they therefore outline what they call the 5 building blocks that enable balanced leadership. And here it is now. This is now where the book sort of. So how do we do it? Yes, so there is the bit where we nominate team members, the ability then to identify potential leaders, select and empower these leaders, actually empower them, and then how do we govern the empowerment itself so that we stay in control, and in the end, leadership tradition, how does it actually end? And we come back. Yes, because there is a lot that they have written about the horizontal leader. The horizontal leader, yes, who is now going to take a bit of control from the project, he or she has to show leadership skills to be accepted by the rest of the team. You see, this is how nitty-gritty the bits they go into. I think it's an interesting attempt, actually, what they're doing. And as I say, I think you can see here that this is something that has taken more than 10 years to try and get somewhere concrete. So let's try and see the process. I think the process itself appears next. I'm not sure anymore.
Nick, Shirley has a comment. How is best measured? I think this was based on what you said here.
The thing is, the whole agile movement is kind of suggesting that you don't know the right answer. So you try something and you look to see what happened and then you adjust.
But see, Shirley, agile is when there is disagreement in information and disagreement in technology. That's when you are agile. And if because there is disagreement, that's why we want to move ahead and course correct based on the feedback. I think this is a bigger point that Nick is trying to make here.
No, I get it. I'm saying your leadership is always in flux. So, this idea of best and what the best step forward is not always clear. It's intrigued as to how they've actually tested it. Because in a way, all paths lead home, and whatever happens, you adjust and improve as you go forward. So, Maybe that is balanced, maybe that is saying, there's a constant tussle between the different types of leadership that are possible in any situation, and you're always kind of debating or allowing one to pull against the other.
Or I think what they're saying is don't commit yourself to a style of leadership. Be agile and pick up whatever is best for the situation at hand. And that best is based on our judgment, right? I mean, of the situation, assessment of the situation.
Shirley, maybe we should ask them a question, a direct question of this form. Sort of, are you therefore saying, we can say to Müller et al. That agile is already doing that, or is agile not exactly doing that? I am thinking of an agile iteration, for example, and there is one iteration where the project manager, whatever we want to call him, actually sits back and lets someone else essentially control the iteration itself. And remember, the agile usually is innate. You've got the governance group and the working group, if you wish, which is exactly the same as what Prince does. Yes? And therefore, the working group must have someone governing it, controlling it. Yes? And what Müller says is that someone is not always the same person in the first group. But I'm struggling myself here. So let us move on a bit.
So
yes.
So this concept of horizontal leadership is I'm struggling with that as well. I mean, does it mean that a project manager who's vertical appoints someone and that person goes above and beyond and assume leadership capacity for, let's say, a problem that they are trying to solve? Or is it more assumed responsibility, which says that that person is assessing the situation and taking initiative and assuming some leadership roles? So it's kind of, I'm struggling there a little bit.
Let's go on. I don't think it is very clear. Let us
Ask this.
go on. Have we done this slide? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try and understand what had already been written in the original book, the organizational project management book, where they have this process, and they're trying to. The other term they throw in is the intention, the leadership intention, the leader intent, as they call it, and what they then call practical leadership. Somehow, how does it happen? And they see two players here. They see the horizontal leader, the project manager, let us say, the vertical leader, that is the project manager, and the horizontal leader, who is a team member who now temporarily will be elevated to run the group instead of the project manager, but without the project manager losing the responsibility and the accountability. So they've got this diagram, which is actually complicated to read, and it does start from the bottom left, where we are looking at the intent. So both sides start with intent, both the horizontal and the vertical leader. And here in the lower left, there is a sequential process model that starts at the lower left with the qualification of possible candidates. Yes, they're still trying to get the candidates for horizontal leadership. Yes, they're looking for candidates for horizontal leadership. And the subsequent selection of a candidate when the need for horizontal leadership arises. Yes, the need has to arise. If it doesn't arise, the balance remains with the vertical leader. Yes, both activities here that are mentioned here are internal decisions by the two leaders. The potential horizontal leaders qualify themselves, for example, through reputation and or superior performance or otherwise. Yes, they're getting their head above the parapet, that I am leadership material. I'm not just a team member. I am actually somehow leadership material. And they make their own intrapersonal, they love this word, internal decision, often based on their own self-efficacy, to accept or decline the offer to lead when selected by the vertical leader. Yes, the selection is from the vertical leader, and still on that first quadrant down there, bottom left, the intrapersonal decision by the vertical leader to select one of or a particular group as a horizontal leader. Yes, so you see both sides are sort of preparing themselves. The vertical leader feels they need someone else to take over for a bit because it is a territory that they are not familiar with, yes, but also the horizontal people, the horizontal leaders, have to start almost proving themselves. Yes? So this one now moves on one up, yes, to the second quadrant. So the empowerment of the horizontal leaders to their temporary role marks a social activity by the vertical leader. And this is what the second quadrant going upwards shows. Yes, the vertical leader appoints or grants the authority to one or to several horizontal leaders. Yes, there is an agreement here. This activity is visible to the rest of the team. Yes, so this is a person from the team who is going to become a leader. Yes, and it constitutes an interpersonal leadership. Now we are open to the team. The team can see us. Yes, from the part of the vertical leaders. The vertical leader shows that they are picking someone. Yes, the persons empowered now have a chance to develop their own self-management capabilities and thus need to develop internally to the extent that the other team members will trust and accept the new horizontal leader once he or she starts to exercise leadership. Yes, so there is that process. They're quite very conscious of that process. That is what they're trying to say. They're not saying this is how a team member works, this is how a leader works. They say that is a static view. Now I'm trying to say, how do we pass from one to the other and back again? So then they go to the third quadrant, up on the top right. Quadrant 3 is in the upper right, addresses the next step. That is the leadership of both horizontal and vertical leaders. They're both leading now. This is crucial. Yes, here the vertical leaders' handover of leadership authority and the associated acceptance of it by the horizontal leaders becomes visible to the team and potentially other stakeholders. The horizontal leaders, take on the device roles and exercise their leadership. Now the leadership styles of the vertical and horizontal leaders need to be synchronized in front of the other members of the team, and other stakeholders and clashes need to be avoided. Yeah, so the word synchronize suddenly comes into the word. Now we've got two leaders and it has to be clear. Essentially, I, the vertical leader, have said, you listen to that guy represents me. Essentially. That is that, I think. You see, the process. And then finally, how does this happen? Once the horizontal leaders have taken over the vertical leaders monitoring and control of the horizontal leaders sets in. So this is the control is still with the vertical leader, as shown in quadrant 4 there. This is an internal leading activity by the vertical leader and continues until the horizontal leaders finish their temporary role and their leadership authority goes back to the vertical leader. Then the cycle repeats itself for the next occasion of balanced leadership. Yes, so they've got that process and they're very proud of that. Actually, that started, as I said in the previous book, of course, in academic papers. It ended up in that book, and from that book, it now becomes a book in itself. Yes. So let us try and assimilate that, if you wish, for 1 week. Go on.
So this is how Prince2 works anyway, Nick, isn't it? I mean, the project manager and the team leader, they're working in this fashion anyway, isn't it?
I am now shivering because this is what I wrote here on my paper. Is this Prince?
Both Prince2 and DSDM, Dynamic Systems Development Method, work on the same cadence, if I can call it that.
I will want to ask that question also. Yes, and I have seen a video of Ralf Müller, a 2014 video, which he has on his own site actually, where he makes a complaint that in project management we teach Prince and we don't teach leadership and all that. While I see a lot of leadership in Prince, that is Prince, like DSDM, like these two things in Agile, yes, all the systems, all the methods that are actually popular, I think have that agreement that the top person does not know everything. Things are becoming complex and therefore impossible to work with. I think we're coming to an end.
Yes, we are.
And I think we've got good food for thought here.
Yes.
Yeah, so these are finally the chapters. Yes, the introduction is about the standard leadership styles, autocratic, democratic, servant, this, that, and the other. Yes. Then, and this is the bit we haven't talked about today much, is this horizontal leadership where they have to study the nature of decisions. And there are strategic decisions, there are tactical decisions, and there are operational decisions. There it becomes actually nice and beautiful, actually. Because as soon as you understand the decisions, the type of decisions that are being taken in a project, it is easier to understand exactly what you are relinquishing or delegating from one of the leaders to the other of the leaders. Yes, and in all of this, we should not take away the word management. That's a question of Agustin. Yes, management and leadership is the same. You cannot separate them. Yes, project management will prevail as a term until we find a better term. But we are finding out you cannot be a manager without being a leader because of the complexity of modern projects. Then in their chapter 3, they give us a theory of balanced leadership, where they've got events and processes, and I gave you the example of the picking bit. They're very, very proud of that. And then you see that the rest of the book is that diagram we just saw. Nominating, identifying, selecting, empowering, and then finishing the process. Yes. So that diagram, the last diagram that I was reading from another paper they have published, is what they have contributed, and then they explain it in what they call this socio-cognitive space. Yes, this is the interaction between two human beings. And you can then look at it in any way you like, as long as you are developing the others to become leaders, or you are mentoring the others, or you are coaching the others, or you are spotting talent, or whatever you want to call it, but always with the view of achieving the goals of the project. That we haven't gone away from project management. And that is essentially the book, as far as I can see, even though I have not seen a copy of the book yet.
Hopefully tomorrow mine will arrive.
And everything we've said is wrong. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely does. Well, thank you everyone for participating in today's discussion. Hopefully next week when the authors are here, we will have lots and lots of questions for them. And hopefully it will be an enjoyable meeting.
What is the next slide?
The next slide is your...
No, forget that. That's about trust. We don't want trust. The other one. Where is the next one?
This one.
There. Yes. Now I see many leaders here. Is that the universe we are talking about? These are the Avengers of Marvel. But when you see the films, if you see any of these films, and even if you like any of these films, they're devoid of content, but they're action films. Every now and then, one of these has a scene where they are the principal fighter, if you wish. They're all together fighting against some menace. Yeah, so you can see the delegation, if you wish, of leadership from one to the other, and every now and then you need 2 or 3 of them to attack the foe, because the foe is much larger or something like that. Is this balanced leadership? I dare ask. I have no idea.
Well, that's a very controversial question, dear Nick.
Am I the Incredible Hulk, or am I one of the others?
Okay. Well, with that controversial question, let me close the meeting today. Thank you everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next